Greetings, fellow audio people. I'm Drew Mazurek, and this is another UAD Spotlight. In this video, I want to spotlight one of my favorite tools for dealing with low end on any source in any workflow. So we're talking live streams, podcasts, voiceover, and of course, vocals and instruments in music production. And the tool I'm talking about here is the UAD Voice of God Bass Resonance plugin, available in both native and DSP formats. Some people, including its creator, Jonathan Little, like to call this thing VOG. Shout out to Jonathan. I know you're watching this video. Other people use VOG. That tends to be the one I use. You use whatever name you want, so long as you're using this plugin, because it is super cool. Now, the original Voice of God hardware came out in 2009 and quickly became an indispensable tool for pro mixers around the world. And the UAD 2 DSP plugin was released in 2011 and has been a hugely popular plugin on the platform. So with our recent native release, I thought it was the perfect time to spotlight how I like to use VOG. So let's get started. So what is VOG? It is an interactive filter set working in tandem that has been custom tailored to sculpt the low end of any source without crowding the low end of your mix. Now, you might be saying, hey, Drew, that sounds like what an EQ does. So let's get this out of the way right here at the beginning. Can you get similar results with an EQ? The answer is yes and no. It's yes if you enjoy working hard and trying to simultaneously adjust a bunch of parameters. And it's a big fat no if you're like me and you value speed and you prefer to work with analog modeled tools like classic Neve, SSL, and API channel strips. More on that later, so be sure to stay tuned. But for now, as usual, I want to get some examples going right here at the beginning. Don't want you to have to wait to hear what VOG can do. Afterwards, we'll do a full walkthrough of the controls, and I'll give you some tips and tricks along the way. And for this plugin in particular, be sure you're listening on good studio monitors or headphones. We're talking about bottom end after all, so no smartphones. Sound good? All right, let's hear VOG in action. So for this example, I've turned off all processing. You're hearing the raw output of this mic, no processing whatsoever. Guess what else you're hearing? The noise and room tone of my room. I've got some video production lights that have fans in them, and a sensitive mic like this will pick them up. And what I'm simulating here is exactly what I'm doing, a video shoot, a live stream, a podcast where you need to do this in real time. Therefore, I'm using DSP versions. I'm using the DSP version of VOG and a couple of other DSP goodies. Gotta own an Apollo to do this. This is just a great workflow, and I wanted to show it to you. And the idea here is that we can't take advantage of proximity effect. So proximity effect is the buildup of low end as I move closer to a directional mic. Engineers have been using that for decades to make voices sound larger than life. In this case, I can't do that. I want the mic off frame to not interfere here. So here's where VOG comes in. So let's go ahead and let's turn VOG on, and let's take the amplitude and let's crank it. And then we're gonna sweep through the frequencies. You can hear that I'm moving up into the upper frequencies, and as I sweep down, it's going down into the lower, deeper tones. This will be different for every voice and every mic situation. I have a preset that I've already created and stored called Drew VO, and without it, I just don't sound as full and rich and warm as I do with it. Now, let's sneak in a couple of these other DSP toys. How about CVOX? pretty ridiculous what it just did to the sound of this mic and getting rid of that noise and the fan noise. And why not? Let's stick on a UA 176 compressor. And we have transformed this raw mic sound that sounded great, but it had noise and room tone. And I was varying a little bit and I didn't have that proximity effect. And now with VOG, CVOX 176, I've got a broadcast ready sound right here. And VOG is a huge part of this. Check this out. Without VOG, it sounds good, but I have lost that warmth and low end presence. With VOG, it feels nicer. It feels nicer in my headphones. I sound more authoritative and better overall. And that is pretty cool. So this example represents a post-production environment. This is from a video shoot. Of course, I'm just showing you the audio. This is from our A-type plugin shoot. This is James Santiago. He's on camera, so the mic can't be anywhere in the frame. It's either a boom or it's a shotgun up from underneath. Regardless, it's hard to get deep, rich bass in a situation like this. So let me show you, let's turn it off and let's hear what we originally captured.
And knowing there were others out there using the A-type for creative purposes, we figured why not challenge our team at Universal Audio.
So a little bit thin, not the dulcet tones of James Santiago that we all know and love. So let's turn on VOG, and a good tip for you, turn the amplitude all the way up and we're going to scan through the frequency. So let's check that out.
And knowing there were others out there using the A-type for creative purposes, we figured why not challenge our team at Universal Audio to see if we can bring new life to this iconic machine.
So as you can hear, as I sweep around, we're finding the inherent frequencies in James's voice. Let me just recall the preset that I had already created, and let's start with it off and then we'll put it back on.
And knowing there were others out there using the A-type for creative purposes, we figured why not challenge our team at Universal Audio.
So a much better result, simple, clean, finely tuned by us in post-production. This next example is a hip hop lead vocal. I've got the entire signal chain up here for you because I want to talk you through how VOG fits into this. You'll notice that I've got VOG in the first insert slot. This allows me to pre-shape the low end and send it into my 1084, right? 1084 has models of discrete circuitry. There can be transformers, there's capacitors, there's resistors, etc. And by pushing my low end into it, you're gonna get a slightly different tone. This is how I like to work. So let me just bypass VOG and let's hear what we've got.
All it really takes is a little devotion, mix it with talent. I found a balance, expand my palette. Tell me what's the fun if you see no challenge. I'm overcome everything that's there.
And so it's a little bit thin. Let me play it again. Halfway through, we'll pop in VOG.
All it really takes is a little devotion, mix it with talent. I found a balance, expand my palette. Tell me what's the fun if you see no challenge. I'm overcome everything that stands in the way of my greatness. The future is mine for the taking.
So this rapper is much more authoritative and sounds larger than life with VOG, and that is super cool. All right, so another quick hip hop vocal example, this time VOG pushing into the API Vision channel strip, followed by Distressor, really making this vocal park. Let's hear it without it first, and then we'll put it on.
Making out that legit and all kick it. Had to make executive decisions with the kick.
Sounds pretty good, but let's do it again, add it halfway through.
Making out that legit and all kick it. Had to make executive decisions with the kick. They say the illest of reveal killer vision. You know my dog, but down some years behind them licks. 100 takes, make a stank face if you with that, and just say.
A little too much at first, backed it off a little bit. But again, adding warmth and adding low presence to this vocal. So for this example, I've got some synths kind of in the bass registers and the low end registers. They're kind of competing with each other. I want to make this work better. First, let me show you, let me just play it for you as is. So I got two tracks kind of trying to compete with each other. I need to choose which one I want to sort of take the bottom. So over here on the left, let's take a look at this Juno bass first. And I have shifted that one up into a more upper bass region, whereas on the this other bass, right, I've shifted that down below it. So I'm creating separation between these two bass tracks by shifting the one up with a higher frequency and shifting the other one down. So let's listen to them both together, and we will turn them on and off together so that we can hear it. So of course I might need to adjust the volumes after the fact, but the main point here is to demonstrate how we can take two things that would be competing for a similar frequency range and separate them, sending one up and one down. That is super cool. So this example is on some guitars. They start the song and they're feeling a little bit thin. And, you know, when everything else comes in the song, the bottom end fills out. But for this intro, I wanted to extract some of the bottom end goodness. Let me play it with them off so that you can hear what I'm talking about. So double tracked plucking guitar, lacking a little bit of bottom end. Let's play it again. Halfway through, I'll put on VOG. So really awesome way to pull out those warm low end tones in these guitars. So this next example is acoustic guitar. This is a client of mine, and this acoustic guitar track you're looking at here was part of a full production, a full band production with bass and so forth. So when we mixed it, you know, when we created it, we weren't really looking for like a deep bottom end out of it because we had it covered elsewhere. But now we want to do an acoustic version of the song. So let me play you what I have without VOG. In the context of the song, it's a beautiful, chimey acoustic guitar, but on its own, it feels a little thin. Let's bring in VOG. Gonna crank the amplitude and start the frequency range at the bottom and sweep it around. Let's see what we get. So we're searching, we're finding the one we like. I have a setting that I already liked. So let me just recall that and let's hear it before and after. So just adding that subtle bit of warm bottom end to fill out that acoustic guitar, that makes me smile. So for this example, I've got a little drum groove, tracked out drums on a hip hop track, and I'm using 4 instances of VOG. And the idea here is that I want to tune the kick drum differently from the rim shots and from the claps and from the percussion. So 4 instances, each finely tuned to help out its track. So let's start with it off, and then we'll turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. So each one of those tuned specifically for its track. The kick drum, I went low and deep. The clap and rim shots and percussion, I'm in higher frequency modes, pushing them forward in the upper bass. The net result is my drums just sound better, quick and easy. Okay, so for this example, we have some acoustic drums, and I'm doing several things here. First of which is I'm using VOG to get some more meat into my snare drum. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let's turn them off and hear what the raw sound sounds like. So not bad, but a little bit thin. Let me play for you again. Halfway through, put in VOG. What's important to me is that I'm pre-shaping that low end and pushing that into my SSL E channel strips. This way, the analog model of that console is getting the low end I want it to get, and it's going to react differently. The other thing I've got going on in this session is I've got a subtle adjustment on this floor tom. Let me turn it off for you. This floor tom was just humming a little bit and lacking a little bit of its note. Let me show you without VOG. It had a bit of that sort of hummy resonance. Let me put in VOG. So do you hear that difference? When VOG is not there, it's kind of humming, and I was able to tune VOG to just kind of get rid of the hum and accentuate the note part of the drum. And then lastly, I've got a couple of room mics where without VOG, they're a little bit thin. And then with VOG, they're a little bit thicker. And on this one, on the second set of room mics, I chose to go a different route and I shifted it up a little bit higher. That first room mic was shifted lower, accentuating the kick. The second set of room mics, I'm shifted up higher, accentuating the snare. Let's check that out. So super subtle, but a nice little adjustment there so that my room mics are serving both the kick and the snare, and I am liking that. Okay, so now that we've heard a bunch of examples, let's walk through all of the features and controls, which, let's face it, won't take long because there's not that many, but I have seen a lot of confusion online about what's going on here, so let's demystify it. First, we have the amplitude knob, which has a range of 0 to 10. This just represents the amount of effect and does not reflect a particular dB value. And below that, we have the frequency knob, which is also simply labeled 0 to 10, since it will change based on the frequency range selections below. Both of these are what you're used to with standard equalizers, but that amplitude knob is not a straight linear control. As you adjust it, it changes the shape of the filter. More on that in a minute. And the frequency adjustment is actually making a resonant filter. And in order to do that with a regular EQ, you'd have to have a high pass and a peaking type filter working together. This is going to be a hassle, and in some cases, not possible. Okay, now let's tackle those frequency range buttons. Let's start with the easy one, that bottom button labeled flat. This is the internal bypass that allows you to quickly compare settings. Green means it's on, red means it's off. The other two are the frequency range selection buttons, and here's what trips up some users. 2 buttons, 2 states, green or red, means 4 possible combinations, right? But yet, there's only 3 frequencies, 40, 100, and 200. What is going on here? This is actually an ingenious little setup that allows for a cool workflow. Let me show you what I'm talking about with some visual aids. Many people want to use VOG just for deep low-end workflows, so they're most interested in toggling between 40 Hertz mode and 100, and they don't really have need for 200 Hertz mode that often. So there are actually two 40 Hertz modes. One, when the 40 Hertz button is pressed and the LED is red, and the other when that button is depressed and both LEDs are green. Notice the small shift on the graph when those two are toggled. This is due to capacitor tolerances that shift the frequency just by a few hertz, and this existed in the analog hardware, so of course we modeled it perfectly. So why two 40 Hertz modes? Let's dig in a little bit deeper. Let's call that second one 40 Hertz green. It's the one you'll use if you're interested in toggling between 40 and 100 most of the time. This is what I use, and it's the one you'll use if your primary focus is low-end workflows. In the manual, we call this standard low mode, and it has a range of 18 to 60 Hertz. And notice how when I'm adjusting the amplitude knob, the shape of the filter changes. This is what I was referring to earlier when describing the controls. There's also a high pass at the bottom of the frequency range selection to clean up the low end. So even when the amplitude knob is set to 0, you're high passing the signal. This is awesome and an important thing to know. The other 40 Hertz mode, let's call that 40 Hertz red. You'll use this to toggle between 40 and 200. And of course, you can get to 100 by toggling that 40 Hertz button back to green. I use this one less, but it might be your favorite if you find yourself manipulating synths and snares in addition to kicks and basses. In the manual, we call this adjusted low mode, and it has a range of 20 Hertz to 62 Hertz. Again, that slight difference caused by capacitor tolerances. This is a little quirky, but you'll get the hang of it and it'll become second nature based on your workflow and goals. And here's a pro tip for you. So if you're like me and you prefer 40 Hertz green, you're gonna wanna save a preset and set it as your default so that every time you instantiate VOG, it's set up how you like it. Now that we've walked through all of the features and controls in detail, be sure to go back and rewatch the examples at the beginning. And I want you to notice how I was sweeping through the frequencies to find just the right one for each source. This is key as each sound is unique and you gotta find the right one for your source. The other thing that you saw me doing was cranking the amplitude knob to exaggerate the effect temporarily in order to help me figure out where I wanted the frequency to be. And then of course, back it off as needed. This is another great tip. The way you're gonna get good at using this plugin is to simply use it a lot and sweep around, and you'll find the sweet spots for your voice or your favorite guitar sound or the kicks and basses that you use most, and then of course, save them as presets. So there you have it, a full walkthrough of all of the features and controls, a bunch of audio examples to inspire you and give you ideas to try in your next mix, and a few pro tips mixed in along the way. I think you're gonna find VOG on the first insert of lots of tracks to pre-shape that low end and get each mix off to a good start. Let me know in the comments, which example was your favorite? How do you like to use VOG? And of course, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so that you're notified of all new UA content. And I'll see you in the next Spotlight.